Hey, everybody. Welcome to SOFcast. I'm Mike Lundstrom, your host, with my co-host,
Master Gunner Sergeant Chance Stanley.
And have we got a big show for you today? We have a special guest with us. He's an entrepreneur, book author, restaurateur, former military, Robert Irvine. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I don't know how I can follow you two.
I don't even know if I did it justice.
I'm a cook.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've walked by your restaurant in the Pentagon. Yeah. You're a cook. Yeah, absolutely. But thank you for being here. It's really special for me. I know it is for him. My family grew up. My kids grew up watching you as a routine. So they're big fans, and I'm sure they're going to see this and go, "Hey, where's my autograph?"
Well, thank you.
But anyway, so look, you're here visiting us at SOCOM this week or today, right? Just today?
Yeah, just today.
Just today. So why don't you tell us about that a little bit? How did it go, and what have you been doing?
Talking about not only leadership, but how do we make the force more resilient? How do we take care of our folks? How do we give nutrition? Talk about mental, physical health, all of the above, the pillars that keep our force resilient. So this morning it was a great conversation, and it's interesting to me how the force has changed over the years, and I'm sure you've seen it change yourself. Nutrition being a big pillar, especially for me, not only being a cook, but also working with special operations in the British military. Slightly different, but the same. So that's what I'm doing here today, and we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, I want to come back to the British military one a little bit later, but let's get into that piece right here while you're here, because for us, we have an organization that takes care of the POTF piece, pressure on the force and families, and it's very important. They bring in guests to speak to people within the command to share information and sort of improve things around us. You did mention something earlier, because I listened to an hour ago. You talked about food being a source of physical and mental wellness. Could you?
Yeah, when the youngsters of today, when I say youngsters, no matter whether you're 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 26, food is just sustenance. But what it actually is, as you get older and you get more mature, you understand what food is. It ties you to a lot of not only of your upbringing, but also any trauma, any happiness. Food plays a huge part on mental health as much as it does physical health. And I focus on that a lot, because a lot of studies, my foundation works with a lot of groups that look at post-traumatic stress and how to overcome post-traumatic stress, or how to deal with it in a better format. And food is a huge part of that. And I would never have guessed that until, working with these groups. Mashed potatoes. You talk about a balloon popping in a room and people jumping. Mashed potatoes, when you're eating mashed potatoes or chicken or something that reminds you of something as a traumatic experience as a child, does the same thing. And I would never have guessed that until I started working with these other folks.
Yeah, I often understand, like for me, breakfast, right? Breakfast has a very emotional start to the day if it's a good breakfast, right? So yeah, that's absolutely interesting. So you talked about the pillars earlier. You want to go through that a little bit, please?
So for me, pillars of success, and each group of people that you work with, and SOF has some great pillars, but for me, the pillars of success are simple. Number one is empathetic leadership. What does empathetic leadership actually mean? Know your people. Know what makes them tick. And by that, I mean, is it family? Of course, it's family, right? We want to know that when we go on deployment, that your family's taken care of, the housing's taken care of, the food, the finances, all those kind of things, so that you can actually do the job that you're employed to do and focus on your teammates, front, back, left, and right. Then we come up with the second pillar for me is egos. How warriors, chefs, athletes, we all have egos in some way, shape, or form. How do we put them to the side for the betterment of the goal, the mission, the team, And the third is authenticity. And the fourth is trust. Not necessarily in those orders, but all four of them I put in a book because I see the biggest failures in small, medium, and Fortune 500 companies are those four pillars. And it's interesting because when we talk about leadership in the military, of which I've been in the military for a long time, you guys the same. You know, when you're told to do something, you don't question it, you do it because that's the way you're trained. But in the civilian world, it's very different. You know, when I came out the Navy, for me it was, you're kind of thrown to the wolves a bit, and we'll talk about that later. But what do I do, and how do I make myself different to somebody else that's going for the same job? You know, another person stands on me to get to that job. You don't do that in the military. We take care of each other. And that was probably the hardest lesson for me was, oh my God, this guy's trying to like jump all over me and beat me up, and he doesn't even know me, you know? So for me, those leadership qualities, and that's what I look for when we hire people. We have 5,000 employees. When I hire people, they have an hour on conversation with my senior leadership team, and my last person is my wife that talks to them. And people say, well, why is your wife talking? She has nothing to do with your businesses. And she doesn't. But she's very intuitive with people, more intuitive than I am. So she gets the last say. And if she likes them, then okay, great. I don't care how good at something you are. You've got to fit the team, because our team spends a lot of time together. We're on the road 345 days a year. Ooh. So I've got to be able to, trust you. I've got to be able to listen to you and make sure you're good and all those things I just said. So, I think leadership is about knowing people, trusting the people.
That's absolutely amazing. So what I draw from that is, you know, the empathy side will inspire people to do more than what is expected versus the minimum if you're just
absolutely. But it's like me saying to you, hey, you know, I want you to be part of our team. I'm going to pay you this much money. You're going to be on the road, you know, 200 days a year. But before we get to that point, what about your family? What is your wife expectations? What are your kids' expectations? What are your, I've got somebody that's autistic, a child that's autistic. I've got one that has some difficulties. My job as a leader is to make sure that family is taken care of, not only by paying the right amount of money, but making sure that the services that they need, they have before he goes on the road. Or there's a contact, there's a secondary, just like we do with the brigade system, right? And the team system where the families jump in. I run my companies the same way. I want a support system there to help the people so that he or she can do the best that they can do at what they're doing. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Otherwise they're not present because they have to deal with what's more important.
Yeah. One thing that you're speaking my language, sounds like what you're saying is intrusive leadership. I prefer engaged leadership because that doesn't have the negative connotation on it, but it's really creating buy-in. It's an investment in your people, and then potentially you reap that, what you sow.
Well, I started my first company 16 years ago. I've lost 3 people in 16 years, and I have 5,000. So that tells you a story. People want, and it's got nothing to do with money, because there's an old saying, and my mother used to tell me years ago, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, right? She is full of these
sound wisdom.
She's full of these like poverty in Oxford, all love flies out the window. All these things, but they're true statements of fact. Because if you're going to employ somebody, you're responsible. I feel just like you do, Master, you're responsible for them people and how they live their life and bringing them back, right? So I have the same mentality. And the military does that to you. There's one thing the military teaches you, and it teaches you really well, is leadership skills. You learn how to lead and give expectations and hold people accountable. And the civilian world, I don't think does that.
probably hit or miss. It's maybe not as consistent. I did work for a civilian corporation at one time that actually people was their business. So there's some that do it, and I'd say there are some that probably don't do it as much. Obviously, yours does. So that's one that does. And you take those cues from the military.
For sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. Taking care of people is what POTUF was all about, and why they brought you in here. And I think the whole week is a series, right?
Yes.
That they're doing,
For Wellness Week.
Yeah, for Wellness Week. Yeah, go ahead.
So you talked about empathetic leadership, and I think it's interesting. That's, like your number one, right? That's what you start off with. Open kimono, or just being, frank, it's something I've struggled with throughout my career. I think the types of personalities, the people that SOF, or really military service in general, attracts type A personalities, very driven, focused. And in the beginning, you're trying to establish, where you fit in and claw your way to the top, whatever that, looks like. And being understanding of shortfalls or shortcomings was not my strong suit, and giving people the right tools, developing them to perform at that high level. It was just an expectation that, well, you're here, you should have the tools. So it's something I've struggled with. And, in recent years, the last probably decade or so, I've really gained a better appreciation for how you can, endear your people to you and really get the most out of them, but not for personal gain, but for the betterment of them and for the betterment of the organization. So can you talk a little bit about that? And just, have you also seen that, like, when you compare how you are now, Chef Irvine now, to like Chef Irvine 20 years ago? I'm sure there's an insane difference.
I can tell you right now, those lessons that you've learned, and they're hard lessons, right? Because when I first got a TV show, 1997, something like that, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. I thought lottery. I got a brand new BMW 7 Series. It was a personalized number plate. I'm the best in the world. Don't mess with me. Nobody can cook like me. I'm a Navy cook. It took me probably 10 years, I would say. I met my wife. That was a huge change in my thinking, because you're right. When you first start in the military, or you come out, or you go into a new job, you want to impress. So it's no matter what, you're going to impress. And I think I did specifically what I was told to do, because I was used to being told what to do. And then I'm like, well, I wouldn't say that in a TV show. That's not who I am. It's not. So I kind of started to buck the trend there and started to be who I was. And I was very opinionated. I still am very opinionated, but I've learned to listen more. I don't think, if I look at my own career as a cook, and then I say, well, look, every cook should be the same as me because they went to the same school as me. We learn at different levels. We expect different things. Some are more dedicated. I don't care whether you're in whatever job you're in. Some are more dedicated to that job than others, right? They give more. When your life's on the line, especially as soft guys, take care of each other. I feel that years and years have changed me in saying, well, look, okay, it's not about me anymore. It's about the holistic environment of the team, which was never my focus before. It was about, oh, look, they're going to pay me, X amount of money. I'm going to drive a new car. I'm going to get a new house, and it's all about me. And it wasn't, because I always use this analogy. Woody Williams, and I said this earlier, and Woody Williams said to me, always be authentic and be who you are. And years ago, if I'd have gone up Iwo Jima as a Marine and looked back as a leader, I would have had nobody following me. Nobody. And that was a scary kind of, thought process for me. Now I know, based on that change of empathy and listening, I know I'd have a full complement behind me. And that was a big change for me. My wife was a huge part of that. I will tell you, I was like, oh yeah, my way or the highway. It's my company. It's my this. It's my TV show. And yet I'd have, just like we have the A-team over here, I'd have producers telling me something, and I'm like, "No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that." So it was a learning experience for me of listen, you might actually learn something. If you shoot to the left, you might hit a bullseye. So I think age is. I took a 3-year hiatus from TV because I was burnt out. And just focused on my companies. And it's so funny because the companies grew enormously, and I mean enormously. I would never have guessed that we have, a protein bar company, $1 billion, in 3 years.
That's incredible.
Right. Yeah. But I also hired people that were smarter than me because I lost that ego. Yeah. But it was a tough time. I will tell you, I was there. For me, it was a tough transition of listening to other people. And it wasn't senior people. It was just people in general. I had a dishwasher who I used to listen to every day, but it took me 10 years to get to that point. So yeah, I understand we always want to be the best we can be. We want to be the star athlete in the class. We want to be the smartest guy in the room. I don't need to be the smartest guy in the room. I've got way smarter people that have been in business that understand more things than I do. And it's a learning process that I think my whole goal in life has changed from making money to just helping people in general.
Yeah. I think later in my career and as I've gotten older, I'm still driven to impress, but I do it now through the actions of people like this guy, right? Surround myself with people, like you said, smarter than me, more talented than me. And then, when they win, of course, I defer to them, any praise. But of course, you're buoyed up on their success as well.
But I say that in the, a book, and we'll get there later, but I say that in my book. I'm like, look, there's no I in team. There never has been in the military, never will be in our organization. Give the accolades to the people that deserve it. I didn't write the book. I spoke. A guy transcribed it. His name's Matt Tuthill. He gets the accolades for the book because he put my words into legible reading,
experiences. Yeah.
because otherwise there's no way. If you look at my social media, it's like 140 characters with no full stops, no commas, no punctuation or nothing. It's like, bleh. It's me because of that. But I've learned an awful lot. I think being around people that are smarter than you actually raises the bar on your education and your expectation of yourself, no matter how hard you are. Look, because we can all be hard on ourselves, because there's nobody can be harder on me than me. That's why I work so hard. But there's a time when you sit back and you say, okay, I've never heard of using plantain in lasagna before, but let's try it. It's different, right? So I tried it. People went nuts on it. And now I use it all the time, but I have to give the credit to the person who gave it to me.
Well, was it because your name was behind it, or was
it wasn't? It was funny. He was a dishwasher from the Dominican Republic. His name's Ruben Espinal. I picked him up off the street. This is a true story. In a bar, I was the executive chef of Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. I give him a job. He was the dishwasher. Came to me with food every day. I said, no, you got to read more. You got to do better. Now he's the executive chef of a hotel in Atlantic City with two houses, 2 kids, 2 cars, and I took that recipe from him. I don't own it. I always give him the credit because he was the one that said, hey, plantains and food is culture. But at that point, it didn't make sense to me. Food is culture.
Oh, yeah.
But it's
identity culture.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it took me that long to figure that out.
Yeah.
Navy cook. I was... I started up on warships, went to the Falklands, came back, went to Royal Marines Pool, Special Operations, SBS. My brother was SAS. And again, a whole different breed of people, whole different mentality, same as yourself, like just driven. I've always been driven. I'm driven for what's next. I like the challenge. So the challenge for me in life is not making money. And it's easy to say that when you've made money, right? The challenge is when somebody says to me, you can't do something because, I'm like, Oh no.
We want to get to yes.
I'm going to show you that you're wrong. And that's the exciting part.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And so one of the things that always fascinates me when I've watched you on the shows is you've had some pretty obstinate people you've worked with. And there's
That's
an
a
interesting
nice way to put it.
Yeah. I've been spat on, kicked, beat up by priests.
But one of the things we always look at, like SOCOM here is always changing and evolving. We have to. Our adversaries are changing and evolving as fast or faster than we are. But you had to deal with change in a short span of a show in a week to shoot it, and then you're out?
2 days.
2 days?
48 hours.
48 hours.
Yeah.
How do you get change?
I think it's so interesting. That's a great question. Like, so one of the things I found was, and this goes back to the change, the ego thing.
Right.
Originally, the network wanted me to know everything about the place I was going into. And I said, I can't do that because I prejudge. Yeah. I'm going to prejudge you. I don't want to know nothing. Let me walk in, let me do it real time. And they were like, no, we need to control you. I'm like, bad word, control me. Yeah. I said no. So I literally walk in, no knowledge whatsoever. The tents and the people get there. There's 42 people on a TV crew. There are 6 builders, and then any volunteers and me. And I have one chef. And I walk in, you tell me your story, and however you react to me is how I react. Right? So if I ask you your numbers, you don't know them, or why you here, what was the original vision of this restaurant? What, where's your background? And that's how I form my opinions of you and your operations and your leadership and all those things. And then, and only then, do I try and figure out a game plan. I don't have a restaurant design. I have a bunch of wood on 2 trucks and 6 builders. And then I figure it out based on the technical ability of the people in the kitchen, the menu, your idea that was before, and what's around you. So for me, it's spur of the moment, just like soft. I mean, you guys spin on a dime and you make it happen, and jump on horses over there and you do this over there. You do whatever needs to be done to get it done. So if you think 48 hours to change with no planning, I mean, lighting, flooring, you name it, whatever it is, and then change the attitude. And here's where I'm going to answer your question now.
It'll take all the time you need.
It takes 8 hours and 1 minute from the minute I walk in till the minute you suddenly realize that I'm not the big bad ogre. I'm the guy trying to help you. But it literally is, I can time it to the minute. 8 hours and 1 minute, they're like, oh my God, it's not a TV show. It's real. He wants to help us. He really cares. And that's the difference, between all these other shows that are on there, and I can name them, but you know them. We were the first one out there to do it. We're still doing it 13 years later. It's real people, real problems, and real solutions. And look, whether there's a gas pipe main blown or there's a water pipe, or I've done it, I got to fix it. Then at the same time, what you see in 42 minutes or 44 minutes is literally 48 hours of work cut down to 42 minutes. But what you don't realize is that I spend 2 days and 2 nights with them people, whether on camera or off camera, and some of it talks about their sex life, their issues with each other, their marriage, things we could never show on TV because it's not pertinent to the story. But I've had rape victims, but I have to get them help and do a TV show at the same time. So my commitment to them is literally, out of the 360 shows that we've done, is I stay in contact with each and every one of you every week. That's my commitment to them to make sure they're successful. That when you look at the debt, $1.1 million in debt, and they're doing $3.4 million in revenue after paying it off now. It's about leadership, teaching, training, holding accountable the people that they have. And they've never had that operating procedures. I mean, this is Operation Central. But we allow, and this is something that SOF does so well, we allow the NCOs, the middle management, to make decisions on the fly in that circumstance. But we don't do that in restaurants. We don't let them do that. So that's why 9 out of 10 of them fail.
It's interesting. In watching the show, over the years, I was always struck by how, because of the emotional ties the restaurant owners a lot of times have, because it's a 60-year in the family type business, because of their biases, they can't see the problems clearly because emotion clouds. But as an outsider walking in, to your point, just, hey, I don't want to pre-read. I just want to walk in and immediately make an assessment. And it's very evident to you, whether it's the decor, whether it's the lighting, it's unclean.
You stepped on pride.
The smell, maybe there's an odor. And I was struck by, as a senior enlisted leader, I'm coming into an organization, in this case, SOF organization, that potentially is not performing as high as it should. Very quickly, I can see some things that are popping up. Like, my challenge is giving it some time to really develop some relationships and figure out how things need to change and what the plan of attack is, right? Because I have a little bit more than 48 hours. But how do you go about doing that? Obviously, you're someone benevolent. You're here to help. But still, you have biases and preconceived notions. And again, that pressure or descent almost, the obstacles of people that are very much emotionally charged.
Didn't think our questions would be easy, huh?
No, I love this because you're right. It's very similar when you walk into from one command to another, like you just stating there. It's like me going into a restaurant to another. You have the time to look and see and listen and find out why. I ask those exactly the same questions. Why do we do this? And if you can't answer why, that's an issue for me, right?
What if the answer is because we've always done it this way?
Then I say I'm going to break that, right? Because just like I said a second ago, for me, the only good things in this life is we come into it with nothing, we change, and we go out with it with nothing. And what we do in between that is what our legacy is, whether it be your family or an organization. And for me, the dissent that I have is because it's called fear. People don't know what they don't know. And the biggest failing restaurant in the world is Italian, because you make great meatballs, you make great sauce, gravy, whatever you want to call it. Oh, mom says you should have a restaurant. So we open a restaurant. 6 months in, you're $350,000 in debt because we invite all our friends, we drink, we eat, we party, and then, we didn't keep any books. How do I change that? Well, I show you what you could have made if you'd have done the correct thing. And I've literally took fake money and I burned thousands of dollars because that's what you're burning every day by not knowing what you're doing or what your purchases are. I say this all the time. I could take the military, literally, if it was a civilian organization, and the feeding part mainly, and I could save billions of dollars based on what I know in the industry and how to purchase and how to prepare. It's hard when you constantly change, and SOF's theater is the world now. I mean, it's everywhere. Wherever there's a country, we're somewhere, right? So you have to change just like I do in the restaurant. But knowing that those questions that you ask, I'm saying, okay, what's your food cost? What's your labor cost? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Oh, we don't know, but we thought it'd be a good idea. Well, it's not, because if I price it out, well, did you price your menu? Oh, no, you didn't. But it's no different to me saying, I'm going to send you to Camp Lejeune and saying, but you're going to buy a uniform, but you've got no money. But you still need a uniform.
Yeah.
It's what you're going to do. Still got to buy food, but we have no money. How are you going to change it? Why do we want people to come to your restaurant? Why do we want people to join SOF? What are we giving them that makes it so unique? They have to be a part of this winning team. And that's what I have that 48 hours to do. Make them feel proud about who they are, where they are. And it's no different to wearing a uniform. When you put that uniform on, you become a different human being.
Yep. That's culture.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Yeah. There's also something to be said about systems and processes, right? You find a lot of that. And I think we're good at that for the most part. Maybe headquarters, kind of.
Yeah, but it changes, right? And you just said it. You're in austere places. You get dropped, something happens, you get moved from point A to point B, and you have to be adaptable and be able to change without too much fuss. And the problem in my world, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's being technology, whether it's always ever changing. So I laugh because when people say to me, "Oh yeah, we pay $27 an hour for a cook in Vegas." $27 an hour for a cook that can't cook. Great. What about a dishwasher? So now technology is washing dishes. Technology is frying French fries. Robotics are doing that. I don't need a human to do that. They never call out, right? They never call. But we can reassess where that labor goes to and use it better in some other place than shaking French fries or making chips.
Yeah. Or on the service side of the house or something.
Yeah. Sometimes we have a hard time with what do we stop doing. If we do everything else great, maybe the one thing we don't do as great is, hey, what do we stop doing? And some of that it's based on our biases or what we've been doing for a long time. That's a challenge. I'm sure you've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, I see that every day. And I told a story a second ago about why can't you have a baked protein bar, right? Well, because it's never been done. Well, guess what? I'm going to make it. And here we are 8 years later, doing something. But it takes gall. I was going to say something else, but I won't. Gall and somebody to support you to make that change. Because if somebody doesn't support you, you'll never get a test site to be able to prove that it works.
Somebody to buy into the risk with you. Yeah.
The risk, because we're afraid of upsetting people. So let's just leave it as it is and not change. Well, that's not a soft. Good luck on that.
Maintain the status quo. It's not going to get done in this security environment.
Yeah, it's incredible. Let me go back in the Wayback Machine for a moment. Let's look at, was it Royal Marines?
Royal Marines.
Yeah, let's go back to young Robert Irvine decides to go into the service. Tell us a little bit about your experiences and maybe something there propelled you forward to where you are today and why you're...
Without a shadow of a doubt. So I was 11 years old. I joined the Sea Cadets. My dad was an Army guy. I used to go to a pub every night drinking. Met this an old chief from the Navy who run the Sea Cadets. I joined the Sea Cadets Mondays and Thursdays. Loved it. Would go away to Marine bases. Would go away to warships on weekends. Spent a lot of time. I fell in love with it. My mother would go to work in the morning, and I would watch and wave on the bus goodbye. I would head towards school, then double back and drink beer in the house with my buddies all day. Not good at 11 years old, but there you are. My mother called the house. I picked up the phone. It was the demise of Robert Irvine. She literally took me to the recruitment office at 15 and a half years old. She's Royal Navy. And them days, it used to be the NAMIT, Navy English and Arithmetic test. And 1 being the highest, 5 being the lowest. I got 5.5. I was really smart, or the dumbest guy on the block. Yeah. And the Navy recruiter said to me, well, I got some good news and bad news. He said, well, first of all, you're in Her Majesty's Royal Navy. Congratulations. And secondly, you're going to be a cook. And I said, that's awesome. Why? Because I was in a home economics class at school with 30 girls and me. And the reason I joined...
sound like a bad situation.
It was a good situation at that time. But I made my first quiche Lorraine, and my dad was his old meat and potato guy, Army guy. I took a quiche Lorraine, pastry, cheese, some bacon, onion, eggs home, and he's like, what is this crap? Totally meat and potatoes. And from that point forward, I fell in love with food. How can you create something from nothing and somebody eat and enjoy it? And it became a passion of mine. When I was told I was going to be a cook, I was ecstatic. I went to my training at HMS Raleigh, in Cornwall. My basic training, 6 weeks basic training. Now, bearing in mind, I've been a Sea Cadet for a long time, from 11 to 16. So I knew how to fold the uniform. I knew how to make beds. I knew how to clean. I knew shine boots and whatever. But when I got there, I had a chief, a WAFU, an airman, who was my squad leader, as it were. And my bed was immaculate. My boots, I was on the money. And one day he came to me and said, "I'm going to kick you off basic training." And I said, "Well, why? What's the problem? My kit's great. My boots are great. My this is great." And it was. I was on the money. He said, "Because you're not helping. You're not a team player." And I said, "Well, because they're lazy." And they were all lazy. I had 12 guys in my dorm. They were all lazy. So annoyed me, and that's an understatement. So one day at 2:00 in the morning, I flipped the lights on, tipped everybody out of bed. Everybody out of bed. And I wasn't the squad leader at the time, by the way. And they were all like, there was a lot of noise. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to teach you how to press your uniform, clean your boots, and make your beds." And we did that for 3 nights. 2:00 in the morning, I chipped them out of bed for 3 nights straight until they got it right. And eventually he came up to me at the end of my passing out or my graduation 8 weeks later, and I'd earned 16 weeks advancement. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But again, the ego, my kit's great, my boots are great, but not what we need in the military. I was not a team player. And I think that's what kind of propelled me to, I don't know, change a little bit. But then I went on my first warship, HMS Apollo. I was a young 16-year-old kid with a bunch of old guys. There's no women on ships, and it was 240 on the ship. I was a cook in the wardroom, 22 officers. And I said to my commander, "Hey, I want to do something in the afternoon," because I used to sleep from 2 to 4. We'd work out, and then I'd go to bed, lay down, listen to music, whatever. And he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to make an afternoon tea." He said, "Okay, what does that mean?" Like coffee, tea, sandwiches, cakes, scones. I said, "But I want to do it for the whole ship's company, not just the wardroom." He's like, "I don't know about that, British Royal Navy, little elitist, them and us kind of thing, upstairs, downstairs." And he wouldn't let me do it, but I could do it for the wardroom. And eventually I managed to sweet talk him. And we did it for the whole ship's company. And it became a thing, and it's still a thing. I was in Rhodes, Spain with the vice chairman of Joint Chiefs a couple of years ago. An American warship and a Navy minesweeper, and they were telling the story, and I was sitting right there when they were telling the story. It was pretty hilarious. Paul Salva, General Salva. So it was pretty funny. So that was the young kind of, I've always been driven to the point of I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the youngest. I wanted to be but I lost that, not the driven part. I lost trying to be the man, as it were. Not the best, because I still want to be that, but having to be the center of attention. I think that's the word I'm looking for.
No, I think it's amazing. A couple things in there like that. The afternoon tea, right? That brought the whole ship together.
Oh,
actually.
for sure. Absolutely.
I mean, that's very powerful. Yeah. That's leadership at the lowest level.
Yeah.
Right. That how do you build a strong team? That's the early days.
It
right?
was funny because I never thought about that until years later.
Yeah.
When you see all these guys like, "Oh, what are we doing, man?" Like a sponge cake, some scones, some sandwiches, a cup of coffee, or tea, whatever, and it used to be the highlight of the afternoon, no matter where we were.
It ties into what you were saying. One of the first comments was our emotional relationship, love, basically, of food. And what you're talking about is bringing people together, a sense of community, camaraderie, even if it's just tea and scones, right? But that is really our relationship, humans, right, with food, right? We bring ourselves together. We talk and engage over a meal.
Think about it. Food is the, and I said this a second ago, international language of hope and love. We can have tough conversations over food, and it makes it okay. Doesn't matter race, color, religion, financial, whatever it is. I remember my girls, one's 24, one's 22 now, and I would want to sit with them, and they were very open with me in their bodily functions, shall we say. and I was horrified as a dad, because that's not what dads do. It's normally mum's job, right? Or we think it is. And I would say, okay, let's so I would cook chicken and mashed potatoes, because that was their favorite thing. And we would talk about these issues. And then I'd have to go and talk to the mom and say, well, I think I said the right thing. I think I did the right thing. And I'm very close to my kids because of that, still to this day. And I think food, again, I've done, I don't know, 360 shows. And one I did with a Navy chief, literally, in Tennessee, who sat in his car with a weapon, wanted to blow his brains out. I was there in that show. And the producer was like, oh, you can't go in there. You can't go in there. I'm like, yeah, I can. I'm a veteran. We have a different relationship. And I think sitting there, I got the gun away from him. I put him in a program, which he's doing great at. But I sat there at the end of that night. I was literally sitting 6 hours in a car with him, by the way. And we had a meal, and it was all better. It wasn't solved. No, I'm not saying it wasn't solved, but at least he could talk to somebody. And I think that's what food does. Births, weddings, funerals, declarations of independence, the Last Supper, you name it. There's food somewhere, right? And I think that's what opens the door to be able to communicate with people.
It's very powerful. I mean, it has a mental and physical effect on us as humans. And we talk about wellness, going right back to the beginning of what we started with, was that wellness piece and how to do that. So I got one question, so I'm going to turn this in on you. So we talked out in the hallway before we started. You're 340 days on the road. How does Chef Irvine take care of himself and find time and space for all the things to get balance in his life? And maybe what we can learn from that.
It's interesting because for me, since the early days, like physical fitness has been a huge part of my life. I work out every day. I worked out before I came here this morning. I'm on